Hi everyone, thank you for watching me here on I See Melanie. Today we're doing a movie review, this time of Lee Daniels' The Deliverance that just came out on Netflix on August 30th. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is I'll start off by doing a recap with some of my thoughts interjected throughout. Then I'll give my final thoughts, and then I have a question for all of you. So let's jump into it. We see that this movie is set in 2011 Pittsburgh and is starring Andra Day, who plays Ebony, a single mother of 3 kids. So the oldest son is named Nate, the daughter in the middle is named Shantae, and the youngest child is named Andre. And so they just move into a new house. Things are a little tight. She's struggling a little bit, but we see that she's trying the best that she possibly can. There's also Glenn Close's character. Her name is Alberta, and she plays Ebony's mother. So from the jump, we could see that their relationship is a little contentious because they're at dinner, the kids, the grandma, and Ebony, and Alberta is chiding Ebony on her cooking, saying that she's put too much garlic in the food, and she and the kids are kind of sneering, laughing to themselves. Ebony does not like this. She tells her mother to STFU, which, again, I could never even imagine saying that to my mother, but obviously their relationship is a little bit strained, but she is there and she's helping out with the kids. The kid's father is away in Iraq, and so we see that they have a good relationship with him, like via the phone because he's so far away. But it appears as though Andra and the father are divorced and or don't get along. We see that Ebony doesn't have the best temper when it comes to her kids. The youngest child, Andre, is kind of acting up a little bit, and she ends up slapping him across the face so much so that he bleeds. And so she instantly regrets it. Obviously, she doesn't want to hurt her child, but we see, just kind of where she is. They're still getting settled in the house, and we see that Ebony is going through some of her bills, and so things are past due. So money again is tight. But she notices that there are flies all over the place, flies getting on her glasses. And then she notices that the flies are coming from the basement door. This is the night that weird things really start to pop off in this house because we see the youngest child who was told not to drink milk earlier because he's lactose intolerant. He goes down to the fridge in the middle of the night. Andre opens the fridge door, sees a carton of milk, and starts drinking it. He drinks the entire thing, but he drinks it so sloppily that all the milk is just like falling down, falling on the floor, and everything. So this kid is possessed by something, obviously, but the good thing is he finished the carton of milk. He didn't put it back in the fridge because, on a side note, I've only seen on TV shows people going to the fridge, getting their milk or the orange juice or whatever, and drinking it directly from the carton and then putting it back in the fridge, which I think is disgusting. But this kid didn't do that, so that's good. Anyway, he's still kind of possessed. And so he goes out into the backyard. Mind you, again, this is the middle of the night. And he goes to like the hatch or like the door that opens up to the basement. And he just kind of stops there because he sees a dead bird. Because earlier on, some random bird just flew into the window and died. So weird things are happening around this house. The next day, the 3 kids are walking home from school and they are being picked on by some neighborhood kids down the block. One of these kids throws a rock or throws something at the oldest son, I believe, and he ends up getting blood on his white uniform shirt. And so he goes home and the mom sees it and she's like, "What's going on?" And the daughter says, "Oh, the kids over there were teasing him." And so she's mad. And so she walks herself over there, as a grown woman, and she confronts the kid in question and she like knocks him down to the ground. She tells him off and everything, which I can understand why she felt she wanted to do that, but that's not really the way you should conduct yourself as a grown woman. But anyway, so she does that and then she comes back home and her mother, Glenn Close, Alberta, is there on the porch and she's just looking at her kind of like, "Girl, like, what are you doing? You need to get yourself together." And she says, then Ebony says something to her like, "Oh, like you were such a good mother when I was their age." We learned that her mother was high, she was abusive, but she has since found Jesus. And so now Andra, or now Ebony, thinks that she's all high and mighty. So that's another reason why they kind of have a weird relationship. And I should also mention too, the mother does have cancer. She's going through chemo, and she has a bill. Andra, or Ebony, has a bill for her of $30,000. So Ebony has a lot of stress, a lot of financial stress too. Ebony also has an alcohol problem, so much so that her son had to hide away a bottle of vodka. But anyway, one day Ebony goes out to drink, and then she comes back home. She walks home, so she's responsible enough in that way. But you see her walking. She's walking like a zombie in the middle of the street, so that's not good. Anyway, she gets home, she changes her clothes to go to bed, and she's kind of like passing out, really. But she's having a vision, and we see this vision that she has throughout the show, the movie, where she sees a man approaching her. We later learn that this is a man that was somehow in her mother's life, and it's intimated that he essayed her. So she has this recurring nightmare. But anyway, this particular night as well, she hears noise in the house, right? So she goes down in the middle of the night. She's got a bat. She opens the basement door. She says, "If you're there, I'm going to come. I'm going to F you up," and stuff like that. Anyway, she goes back to the kitchen, but she's still drunk. And so she throws up in the kitchen sink. And her son comes down. I guess he heard the commotion. And then he confronts her about she actually stole some money from him, some money that his dad sent. And they have not a good relationship. And the son tells her off, basically calls her a bad mother. They get to fighting. And then the youngest son, Andre, he hears and he tries to stop them, but he ends up like tripping on an electric cord. And that kind of breaks up the fight. And the mother's like, "Oh my gosh, my baby, are you okay? Are you okay?" And then the oldest son's, "Yeah, you're the mother of the year, aren't you?" The next day, we see the DCS officer, played by Monique, come by to check in on Ebony. So Ebony's moved, but she hasn't reported her new address to the place. And anyway, so she calls the kids in to ask them questions, see how they're doing. The kids have bruises, and when she asks them how they get there, they're very evasive and give very vague answers like the playground gave me this bruise, right? And so she gives the daughter her card, say, "Call me if you have any issues." And Ebony doesn't really like that. But the officer says, like, basically, you have to get yourself together. You need to look out for these kids. And we see from this run-in that Monique's character and Glenn Close's character, the grandma, they don't really care for each other too much. When she leaves, there is a woman who's in a car just staring at the house kind of awkwardly, and we're going to run into her a bit later. They later have a birthday party for the youngest girl, Shantae. So some of her friends are there, some of the adults, the aunts, the uncles, or whatever, are there as well. And so Ebony is quite drunk at this party, and people are looking at her like, "Girl, like, get yourself together. You have to work tomorrow. Why are you so drunk?" Anyway, eventually the entire party guests leave, and the kids had been annoying Ebony throughout the entire party, especially the youngest one. And so later on that night, she has a run-in with the youngest child. He's just acting very weird. And then later on, Ebony, the mother, the three kids end up in one of the rooms with the big mural. And there's a big thud. And the grandma's like, "What's going on?" The grandma goes up there, and we have Ebony on this side, the three kids huddled together, looking terrified on the other side. So the grandma asks, like, "What's going on?" And nobody has any answers because they're all really frightened or shell-shocked or whatever. But something is clearly awry. And there is a big bang and hole in the wall, so something happened there. The next day, the kids go to school, and all sorts of craziness goes down with them in their respective classrooms. So let's start off with the oldest boy, Nate. And these are very nice children, very well-behaved children. But anyway, so Nate is in class, and the teacher is talking about AIDS and the impact on the Black community and all this stuff. So not nice stories, not good statistics. But this kid, Nate, is just laughing hysterically for a long time. And then later on, when the teacher's like, "My brother died from AIDS. AIDS is not a laughing matter," he goes up to the teacher, like, bows up on her, and stares her down and gives her a really menacing look. The daughter, Shantae, is in choir or something, I don't know. Then she goes up to her teacher. He looks down. She's got blood running down her leg, so I don't know if that is to signify that she's menstruating or if she just cut herself and blood flew down, but it was very awkward. It's very weird. And then the son, the youngest son, Andre, who has been most affected by this demon, he pulls down his pants in the classroom and he defecates. And he picks up the feces and he throws it at the teacher. And then we learn later on that he ate some of it. So Andre clearly has the worst end of whatever is possessing these three children. So things are not good. All the kids go to the hospital that day and they get some very comprehensive looking tests. So they get MRIs, they get ultrasounds, they get x-rays. The daughter looks like she gets a gynecological exam. They get psych evals, which I thought was interesting that they got all those tests so quickly because I'm Canadian, I'm from Ontario. You can't get an MRI within hours of booking it. Different systems, but again, knowing that Ebony is working at a barber shop, she's not doing the best financially. I thought it was very odd that she was able to get very expensive tests so quickly for three children. But anyway, that's not really the point of this. Anyway, the doctor is reviewing the results with she and the grandma, and she says that everything looks fine. There's nothing abnormal with these kids. But Ebony's like, no, like something is wrong. Why are they acting like this? They don't act like this. Something is clearly wrong. And she's getting a little like hot under the collar, and her mom's kind of like, just calm down a little bit. And the doctor says, well, can you explain those bruises? And so anyway, so they leave, and the mother and the grandmother are talking, and Ebony's upset with her mom for telling her to like pipe down. And then she goes on to talk about how the mother's racist against her, which, I'm sure there are people who have mixed race children who kind of resent or are racist against the race of their child. But I don't know, to me, it just felt kind of weird to interject that part right there. And especially because they were talking, they were having this fight in front of the kids too. But anyway, they go home. And later on that night, the mother, Alberta, gets a crucifix, shows it to Ebony, saying that you need this, you need Jesus, basically. And she hangs it up on the wall. And these kids are not all right. We see Andres in the tub, and Nate is holding him down as to drown him. And so Ebony hears the craziness, or both she and her mother hear the craziness. Ebony goes, she pulls Nate, off Andre, and he goes to his grandmother, and we can see immediately he's like, what the hell just happened? And he's regretful of it because they're possessed. They're good kids. They don't mean to do this. And then we see Andre, he's looking at his grandma and he's giving her the most like demonic look ever. So she's kind of freaked out too. The children's services officer, Monique, comes back and she's again checking up to see what is going on with these kids. They're not in school. They're not doing well. What's going on? And then Ebony tells her that something about this house is making them go crazy. And of course, she's like, that's ridiculous. Then she says, yes, they're going crazy. It's not fair. And you need to listen to me from one Black woman to the other. And then they have a bit of a discussion about Monique's backstory and everything. And she tells her, Ebony, you need to get yourself and your children together. And then her mother, Alberta, comes down the stairs with a baseball bat, wielding it like Negan from The Walking Dead, and basically runs Monique out of the house. And then the funny thing is, right after she does that, she goes to her daughter and says, oh, you know what, Ebony, you need to be better for the children. We don't want to lose them. It's like, what do you think? You come down here with a baseball bat and you run out the caseworker. Do you think that's a good look? You think that's a good look to see that this grandma who lives here with her children is running people out with baseball bats? Anyway, and then we see that lady who was casing out the house before, she is back. Some time goes by. Ebony's not doing well. And she goes to a bar and she gets a little drunk. And this woman is there and she sees her like as she's leaving. And they decide to have a very product placement coffee at McDonald's. They have some McCafe and they talk. And so she tells her that she was friends with the people who used to live in the house, a family who used to live in the house, I think in the 90s. Two parents and a boy and a girl. They used to be part of the church, and all these weird things were happening in the house. And the son in particular was possessed by a demon. And this woman here, she is a conduit of Jesus, and she is able to do deliverances, which is different from exorcisms, apparently. But she's able to do this. So she attempted to do this with this family, but this demon that was inside this boy named Trey was just so strong. And so basically, the whole family went a little crazy. The mom, one day, possessed, she axes the husband in half. He's dead, obviously. She goes and she she strangles the daughter, kills her, and then she hangs herself and she dies. And the son is also dead too. She doesn't explain exactly how, but he's dead and gone. But essentially, the demon of Satan is in this kid Trey's like form, I guess, and that form lives in Ebony's house, and that's what's messing up her kid. And she says, Apostle James is her name. She says that this demon wants to take over your son, Andre. And then Ebony's like, this is madness. I'm gonna go. So she leaves, but she says, no, before you leave, take my card because you might need me later. And while this is going on, Ebony's mother, Alberta, is walking through the house because she hears something weird or whatever. And she encounters the form of this demon, of this boy, and she ends up dead. So Ebony goes back home, and I think there's a fire in the kitchen or something, but then she sees her mother dead, and obviously she's very upset by that. The house is a crime scene now, and Ebony and the kids are driving off to go to a hotel or whatever. And the youngest son, we see he's possessed again by some sort of a demon because his eyes go completely black. And he says something to the effect of, like, your mom hates you, or she never loved you, and your kids hate you, or something like that. Ebony is freaked out, and she stops on the road. She's so freaked out that she nearly got into a head-on accident with an 18-wheeler. Anyway, she goes to a restaurant, and she says, something is killing my kids, because all the kids are kind of messed up in the back of the car. And so this guy, the waiter there, whoever he is, he goes out, he sees the kids. They're in the backseat of the car, and they look completely fine. Next thing we see, Ava is in a psych ward. She's been on a psychiatric hold, and we see the same psychologist we saw earlier on asking her questions about if she is feeling weird, if she's been drinking, if she's been drugging, and all these types of things. All the kids are in the hospital at this point as well, and so we see Monique's character, the caseworker, she goes to Andre, the boy who's possessed, room, and he's telling her things about her life, about her son, and things that he wouldn't know. And he's just going crazy. Like, he is walking up on the walls, he's jumping around, like he's full-fledged possessed. Anyway, some time passes. I don't exactly know how this happens, but Ebony is able to steal a nurse's uniform. So she's walking around. She's kind of like, giving high fives to the staff there just to pretend like she actually works there. But everyone's like, who is this woman? I don't know who she is. Ebony is able to get into Andre's room and take him out. And a doctor and a security guard are asking what's going on in room 502 or whatever room it is. And these nurses, who are really terrible actors, they say, oh, I don't want to go in that room because it's scary or whatever. And so when the doctor and the security guard get there, there's nobody there because Ebony is taking the kid back home with the help of Apostle James. And they're going to do the deliverance in the room, which one thing is like, okay, if a child is missing from a hospital, especially a child that's on psychiatric hold, it doesn't really matter, a child, period. That's Amber Alert territory. But somehow Ebony's able to take the kid back home. They're doing this exercise until the wee hours of the night and until the bright daylight. So they're there for easily 7 hours and nobody comes to check up on them. But anyway, just suspend that disbelief. Back at the house, Andre's on the chair and Apostle James is about to do the deliverance with Ebony standing right there. So Apostle James gets some holy water and she flicks it on the boy and he immediately starts like steaming up. Anyway, he changes his form into a ghastly, demon-like version of Alberta, of Glenn Close. And so Apostle James says, "Oh, this is Apostle James here, and this is your daughter Ebony over there. Do you see us, or whatever?" And then Glenn Close has to utter words that I doubt she ever thought she'd hear herself saying, especially at this grown age. But I don't even want to say it. I'm gonna put it on the screen right now with a bit of a blur because I was like, I couldn't believe my ears when I heard this. But anyway, so she says that. And then she also says, "Oh, the half-breed whore." It's like, "Oh, Jesus Christ." So maybe this is the abuse that Ebony was talking about when she was a kid. That was horrible. So the apostle says that she's speaking as Jesus and she's here to do a deliverance. And this demon grandma figure is just like bopping all over the house, moving all over the place. And things are going a bit crazy. There's a storm going on. The shutters are shaking. It's a madhouse. So anyway, Apostle James tells Ebony to go upstairs and that she'll deal with it. So by the time she gets back, the demon is in the form of Demon Andre. But then he goes invisible. And during this time, this demon is running her completely ragged. The demon is, lifting her up in the air, dropping her, strangling her, pulling her by her hair, it's wild. And she's injured during all this violence and she's on the brink of death. And at this point, Ebony comes down the stairs. She sees her and she says, "I'm dying, but here, take this. It's a vial of holy water." So now it's Ebony's turn to contend with this demon. I should mention during this time, the kids, the older kids who were at the hospital, their bodies are being controlled by this demon as well. Ebony goes down to the basement and she finds the demon in Andre's demon form and she throws holy water on him. He doesn't like this. He pins her to the ground, and then we see that his form turns into a demon version of her, of Ebony. The demon somehow telepathically gets Ebony to hurt herself, so she makes her bang her head against the floor of the basement. She gets her to contort her body in all sorts of unnatural and very uncomfortable looking ways. And Ebony calls out to Jesus, and this demon doesn't like this. And so the demon comes and puts her foot on her neck to cut off her circulation, to cut off her oxygen. And Ebony sees her life flash before her eyes. So she sees good memories of she and her kids, and I think her mom might have been there as well. And so she kind of comes to a little bit. And she tells the demon, or the demon tells her, "Your kids don't love you. Your mother doesn't love you." And she says, "Yes, they do love me. And I rebuke you in the name of Jesus." And then Ebony starts speaking in tongues. She starts speaking in tongues. At this time, we see some flashes of the kids in the hospital, and the oldest son is posed like Jesus on the cross. And the older daughter, I'm not religious, I'm not quite sure which figure she's supposed to be. Maybe she's supposed to look like Mary. But they are, yeah, being controlled in a good way, I guess, by Jesus. So this deliverance works. The demon combusts. It is writhing around on the floor, fire all over them, but eventually a portal to hell on the basement floor opens up, or to somewhere, who knows where, and the demon is sucked there and no longer in the house. And eventually, Ebony, she walks around the house and she finds her son Andre looking like the sweet boy that he is, unpossessed, and he seems to be pretty okay. So it appears to be a day or two later. We see Ebony's at the house. She's a bit, beat up, bruised up and stuff. She's there with a caseworker, and we see that she's packing her things because she's making the good choice to get the hell out of that house. And so the kids have been taken away by the state. They're in foster care or what have you. And Ebony tells the caseworker that she believes, God willing, that she will get the kids and get them soon. And Monique says, "I don't know how you can have that degree of faith. I don't." But then Ebony gives her a necklace with a pendant of the crucifix or a cross and tells her that she needs to keep the faith. And then we see there's like some text, and it says that 6 months later, The kids are back with her, and now they're moving from Pittsburgh back to Philly to start anew. And that's basically the end of the story. But then we see some other titles about the real life story. And they mentioned the lady who actually went through this experience and how the house was unoccupied until it was eventually bulldozed 5 years later in 2016. And that is our movie. Now let's talk about what I thought of this movie. So while I was watching this movie, I was doing my hair, so I missed some of the frames. Don't worry, I did watch it again for a second time on 1.5 speed, but I missed a frame where it said that this story was based or inspired by real life events. And of course, I was kind of jogged into wondering because they had those epilogue notes. Anyway, and so I was Googling it, I was reading the story of it. And yeah, the lady had some weird happenings going on in her house and so on. But I thought she could not have had anything remotely as bad or as severe as what we saw in this movie, because that was absolutely wild. And nobody would have taken her seriously if she claimed all these things happened in her house. And it's so much so that I think that Lee Daniels has no right to say was inspired by real events, because it's so sensationalized, it's so fictionalized that it's just a movie, which is fine. Most of the movies I watch aren't actually based in real life or based on real life stories. Like, I don't know, I feel as though maybe he said that to get some more credence with this movie. I don't really see why, but it's not the biggest deal in the world, but like this ain't no real story. My favorite performance in this movie was by Monique. You can clearly see why this lady is an Oscar winner. She's a fabulous actress. She did a really great job. But one thing I would say about her character and the choices the writers or directors made with her, to me, it didn't make sense to have a government worker, a caseworker for the Children's Services Department, to look and present as fancy as her character did. To me, it was just incongruent to have a caseworker, an officer of the Children's Services Department, show up all dressed up. She was dressed up impeccably throughout this entire show. Like, her hair was done like she just came from the hairdresser every single day. And she came up driving a Mercedes Benz SUV. Like, to me, as somebody, and I'm not saying that somebody who works in that job can't afford an SUV like that. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying in terms of how you present and how you can relate to these people who are obviously going through a tough time, because they wouldn't have you here coming to their house every so often if they were fine, if things were going well in their family. And it just seemed really tone deaf and just not right. And to me, like, this is just a choice that the director or whoever makes wardrobe and like prop choices, like, it just, they could have made a better choice to make this story seem that much more grounded in some degree of reality. I only know Andra Day from that song Rise Up. I've never seen her act before. I know she was in that Billie Holiday movie where she was singing and acting too, but I haven't seen any of her work until now. I have to say her acting to me was a little wooden, and it kind of fit with the character a bit, but not completely. I thought she was pretty good at the more like spooky parts, right towards the end, where she's yelling at the demon and all those types of things. I think she did well towards the end, but her acting was a little wooden. But I see she hasn't acted that much, but she's a great singer. Her voice is amazing. I read in an article that Lee Daniels, he took some liberties with the story, so obviously he did that. But one of the things he added was making the grandmother, white, because he has a lot of mixed race friends. He said, like, okay, okay, sure, fine. But to me, some of that storyline didn't really make any sense. Like, it was very half baked, I thought, in the stories. At one point, Ebony confronts her mom about, always wanting to have black men in her life, but she resents the fact that she has a half black daughter, which I'm like, well, that's a deep seated issue. That's a very deep issue if your mother kind of resents your race. But to me, it wasn't fleshed out. Like, it was kind of pointless. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, if they wanted to cast Glenn Close or a white woman to play her mother, like, that's fine, but adding this element and not really fleshing it out enough, because there are too many things going on in this movie with the possessed children that to really delve into this. So I thought that was kind of not really needed. And speaking of Glenn Close, girl, Did you just want something to do? Like, were you just like, "Oh, I'll take any role?" Because as somebody who is as celebrated as she is, like, this role was just so, uh, silly, like and there's nothing wrong with taking silly roles, okay? Not that I'm taking any roles, I ain't no actor, but and not every movie has to be cerebral or deep or whatever, but Glenn Close, why? And also, speaking Omar Epps, why was Omar Epps even in this show? I love Omar Epps. I know him the best from House, actually. I used to watch House like crazy back in like, I don't know, the late aughts and the early 2010s until it ended. And so even like having him, like his story didn't really do anything for the story either. So he was dating or he was like kissing up on the grandma a little bit. It's like, okay, like they could have put anybody in that spot. If you get Omar Epps, like give him something to do, okay? Going back to Glenn Close, never in my life did I expect to see her weaving in some tracks, leaving some room at the top for the closure. That was a shock to see on my screen, to say the least. One thing that I noticed about 10 minutes into the movie was that the product placement was legit. It was so conspicuous, so front and center. The first thing I saw was the Simply Orange in the fridge door while the kid is drinking the milk. We also saw Coke right there, Absolute Vodka, Dish Network, Ensure, like the food replacement drink. McDonald's McCafe was right there as well. We even saw a mane and tail, the shampoo in the bathroom. So, we need money to pay for these things, yeah, but like we can be a bit more subtle with the product placement, Lee Daniels, for the next project, okay? And with the set design of the house, that was a very nice house, a nice older home. It had the stained glass windows. The decor of the house was beautiful. There were nice paintings, the pendant lights. The staircase had some really detailed wood paneling that I thought was beautiful. I thought was really nice. But one thing that struck out to me was the kitchen. The kitchen was so old and raggedy, and I thought that maybe that the kitchen was so old because it led to the history or the lore of the house. Like maybe something bad happened with that old family, the original family back in the day that happened in the kitchen and they didn't renovate it because maybe the owner of the home was afraid of the power that's in that room or something. I don't know, but it was just a very stark contrast seeing this very old-timey kitchen. And I guess it looks like a real house. I don't know if it's a set or not, but if it's a real house, I guess maybe the person who owns it just didn't feel like renovating that kitchen. I guess I don't know. So this is my question that I want to pose to you, and especially those of you who are religious, Christian in particular. I guess on paper, technically, I am Christian, but like I'm not. Like I'm very secular. I'm not religious. I did go to a Catholic school, second Catholic school choirs, but I only stayed in the church choir because the priest bought us tickets to Rent, and so I stayed on just so I could see Rent in the theater. But anyway, this is my question to you. How do you feel about movies like this that showcase demon possessions and exorcisms or deliverances? Do you feel as though this is a Hollywood machination, a Hollywood theme, or do you feel that this is real? And what do you feel about it in general? Like, how do you feel this movie addressed the issues? I would love to know because, again, I'm secular. So, like, to me, these kinds of things I just kind of find entertaining as a piece of, as a movie to watch. But I'm curious to know what a religious person feels about such a spiritual type of occurrence. So, if you're a Christian, if you're devout, I would love to know what you think. And I think that's it for the movie. My overall thoughts for this movie was like, it was okay. Like, it wasn't good. I wouldn't call this a good movie. I wouldn't call it terrible either. It's entertaining. To me, it's like a popcorn flick, right? It's something that kept me um, interested the entire time. It was very far fetched. It is a movie. It's a movie about demons, so it's going to be far fetched. Some of the dialogue was not very good. um, but it was like it's a Netflix movie. You know what I mean? Like it's passable. It wasn't too long, which was good. It was like an hour, I think, like 45 minutes for 49 minutes, so it wasn't too long, that's one of my complaints about movies that aren't that great. They shouldn't be 2 hours long, and this one wasn't. Yeah, so, like, I'm not gonna remember this movie in 5 years. I'm not gonna remember this movie in 2 years, but it was okay, it was passable. So please share your thoughts on this movie in the comments area, and share your thoughts on my comments in my review of this movie. Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? Where am I kind of off base? Where am I spot on? Whatever. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So let's start a discussion in the comments area. And I have plenty of other reviews and other types of content planned for this channel within this next month. So make sure you click the bell button wherever it is so you get notified when I upload something new. So again, thank you for watching me here on I See Melanie, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.